Hey, so I'm just gonna get right into it. Now, one of the main issues in Star Wars, if you're a Star Wars fan, we have this problem where a lot of people look at Star Wars. I love Star Wars just like anybody else. And one of the biggest issues with Disney is the fact that Disney made a lot of changes to the overall Star Wars universe. These are people who didn't study Star Wars. We've been studying it for years. YouTubers like Digital Plagiarisms, YouTubers like Star Wars Theory, so on and so forth. YouTubers like the Expanded Universe YouTuber Quinlan Voss, so on and so forth. And shout out to Quinlan Voss, because he's such a legend. He's a great YouTuber. He actually knows what he's talking about. A lot of these Star Wars YouTubers don't know what the hell they're talking about. Hello Greedo, some Star Wars Explained. These clowns, these hacks. These fools know nothing. They walk the path of foolishness. They walk into buffoonery and chicanery. Everything coming out of their mouth is chicanery and nonsense because you can't boast about something that you don't understand. You didn't study Star Wars. You didn't read The Dark Empire. You didn't look at you don't know about Tom Vike. You didn't read Star Wars, Tales of the Jedi, the comics. The comics, they didn't read that. They don't know about the Star Wars universe. They didn't read Republic Commando. They didn't even play the game at least. Hard Contact, Republic Commando, Imperial Commando, so on and so forth. You see, they don't understand those things because they didn't read it. They're not really going to know, right? So when things like this occur, one of the biggest issues is that when Disney shows up, of course, with Filoni Baloney, I like to call him, but yes, Dave Filoni. Now, it's great that Kathleen Kennedy is no longer in charge. I'm glad. But there are issues with David Filoni. David Filoni has been altering the Star Wars timeline for years. He altered the Star Wars even when Leland Shee came up to him. And he was the upholder of the Expanded Universe. He came up to him and was like, hey, look, some of the things you're doing, David Filoni, this contradicts the lore. He's like, I don't care. This is before Disney showed up. So you got that dude who thinks like that in charge. They'll have a great idea. It'll be the Thrawn trilogy, some of the best storytelling in Star Wars history. Let's make a brand new story and let's make Ahsoka the main character. I'm really excited. Oh boy. And he'll just plaster Ahsoka everywhere. It's some kind of weird fetish. This dude is a clown. All he does is fetishize this woman. So that's the thing. We don't care what weird nonsense that you look up in private in your room, your house, your basement, or rule34.com or whatever. But the fact that every single time he has a new idea, the first thing that he does is that he alters it dramatically. Dave Filoni has a habit of constantly altering ideas. He's never loyal to the vision of Star Wars. He always alters it to fit something that has nothing to do with the continuity, nothing to do with the universe, and for whatever weird reason, he keeps shoehorning in Ahsoka in everything. Tales of the Jedi. Finally, ever since the EU, you finally get to learn about Count Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn before the events of Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. What must have happened during that time? I think that's even before Phantom Menace. Whoa. Ahsoka, let's learn about when she became chosen. Wait a minute. She's able to communicate with giant animals? When she's a child? Yeah. Even Anakin couldn't do that. How the hell is that possible? She would have to be one of the chosen ones. Yeah. Are you measuring the differences of force sensitivity, especially post learning about midichlorians? Do you even understand what midichlorians are? That's clownish. Midichlorians are clownish. That's nonsense. Of course. Fools who know nothing about Star Wars, don't study it. All they do is sit on their butt, listen to Plinkett's fat, foolish self all day, and then just regurgitate whatever Plinkett says instead of actually looking at the films objectively or analyzing what George Lucas laid down when he even made the prequels. I bet you don't even know the plot of A Phantom Menace. Tell me the plot. I don't need to know. It's clownish. I don't need to know. Mm-hmm. And if you can't even say the plot of A Phantom Menace, you don't know nothing. The Trade Federation is blockading over Naboo. The two Jedi are sent in to quell the issue. That's simple. What about Attack of the Clones? The people are defecting from the Jedi, from the Republic, which features the Jedi Order, because they believe that they are being run by corrupt bureaucrats. When they defected, they formulated 3 sectors. The Trade Federation, which was already there from the Cato Neimoidians and the Phantom Menace. The CIS, the Confederation of Independent Systems, which are creating brand new droids outside of just the Trade Federation, which are like where the super battle droids come from. And of course, the Techno Union, which is the large, huge ships on Geonosis, that's from the Techno Union. That's why they call them, in Star Wars Battlefront 1, that take down the Techno Union ships. These factions, including Count Dooku, Palpatine, and many other Sith Lords and people who are aligned with the Sith, have left and defected from the Republic. And it's getting so out of hand, and they're even starting to expand and take over systems to a point that the Jedi have to interfere. And Cypher saw this coming and believed that they would eventually wipe out the Jedi Order, which he was right. So he initiated the making of the clone army against their permission. They wouldn't even allow an army to be made. That's how corrupt they've become, unfortunately. Now, I don't mean to get on the Jedi, because I still believe that despite the Jedi being manipulated by bureaucrats, I still think that they're great. However, these are the kinds of nuances and information that people like Dave Filoni knows nothing about. So when you get a lot of people who don't understand it very well, this is what leads you into issues. Now, one of the most fundamental changes that Dave Filoni made to Star Wars are the inhibitor chips. The inhibitor chips were a fundamental change in the continuity of Star Wars, where they decided to go from having the clones making a choice to do Order 66, because they believed that the Jedi betrayed the Republic versus some kind of generic, one-dimensional brainwash nonsense, as if they're no better than droids. Now, I know what you're thinking. What does that even matter? It makes more sense, because how do they all just make the same choice and da-da-da-da? Actually, according to the original continuity and even according to Disney's canon, they did not all go through with this, but most did. But why? You see, when there's an emotional connection, when there are people, clones, looking at people like Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin stated, "Let me go save that clone," Obi-Wan states, no, it's just a clone, don't worry about it. Stuff like that. Certain Jedi might not have cared about a clone's life because they saw it as expendable, since they can just be cloned into a facility that could easily feel betrayal, you see? Because it has more weight and sense when the person makes the choice for themselves. There's a deeper emotional devastation there. There's more depth. When you just have it to be some generic nonsense, like, oh, it's just a droid. That's bland, that's forgettable, that's generic. I know you can do better than that. There was no thought put into that. That is so one-dimensional, right? And people have been praising this for a while, like, oh, the inhibitor chip. It means nothing because you were being controlled. You did not make the choice for yourself. And for those of you that keep saying, oh, well, George Lucas should have explained it better, you're wrong. He did. In Attack of the Clones, it explains that clones were bred for war, but they were also completely bred genetically to take orders. That's why they're willing to do those things. But if you pay attention to the expanded universe, it expands on this further by showing that the clones made an actual choice and decision, thinking that the Jedi betrayed them, thinking that the Jedi betrayed the Order. This is so much more. It's far beyond the foolishness. When you make it an inhibitor chip, what makes clones special is that there's moments where you can give them more humanity. But even if you don't give them more humanity, they're still soldiers. They're still men. There's still something compelling about seeing men fight in war and defend, and sometimes even live and die for what they believe in. But what ends up happening is that all of that dies if it's just some kind of robotic puppet master. There is no choice. There is no you betrayed the Republic or you see us as expendable. We shouldn't side with you. There's so much more than that. To take the inhibitor chip and make that the new canon makes clones no different than a droid, which is ridiculous. The fact that people defend it, of course you would, because you don't even know anything about Star Wars. You didn't study the expanded universe. A lot of you sequel trilogy fans and you Disney fans don't know about the expanded universe, don't know about the lore. You don't know about Sorasu, which is a form of Terracassi and Jedi training, Jedi combat techniques. I believe that's the one that Obi-Wan uses. You don't know about Terracassi. Terracassi is the martial arts in the Star Wars universe. You know about midichlorians because you brushed it off and claimed that it was clownish instead of analyzing midichlorians as it still applies to the Star Wars universe since George Lucas introduced it. Instead of actually giving George Lucas a chance, you thrashed him, called him a clown, and now you have nonsense being added into the canon that makes no sense, that kills all the emotional weight, all the depth. And it's funny how you say, oh, clones are more complex than the Clone Wars CGI show. But you know what's more complex than even the Clone Wars CGI show? When you choose to commit Order 66, or you choose to not commit it, instead of having to get de-chipped. Then you have to ask stupid and foolish questions like, okay, so who got de-chipped and how? And why did That sounds like a bunch of shenanigans. You gotta explain why each individual person who just happened to have not been chipped, how they got de-chipped just in time to not commit Order 66. That's an unbelievable astronomical coincidence that makes no sense, when before it was just a decision made. Some clones didn't do it. They didn't feel morally comfortable. That's interesting. Let's dissect why. Why didn't you do it? Well, look, I fought with Anakin. I fought with this Mace Windu, and all these different people. We fought against Asajj Ventress. We fought against Grievous. And they cared about me, and I felt guilty. I felt remorse. That's interesting. Why did you do it? Are you kidding me? You know how many of these Jedis just watch my men die? I lived with these men for years. It doesn't matter if they're a clone. I lived and fought. They died by my side, and they just sat there and thought they were expendable. I said, we need to go back and save some. It's like, no, we need to follow the mission. Those are just clones. They're just clones. So yeah, when they told me to commit Order 66, I didn't hesitate. Oh boy. Right, so it sounds kind of dark, I know, but the point is, this is fascinating. Think about the psychology here. Think about the emotional devastation here. This is the kind of depth we had in Star Wars. We had Star Wars Republic Commando having complex characters, realistic storytelling, gameplay, and storylines inspired by military stories and inspired by games like Tom Clancy, like Rainbow Six and stuff like that. That's genius. That goes far beyond the stuff that we had before. Star Wars was expanding. It was growing. You can say what you want about George Lucas. You can say what you want about the prequel era. But during that time, it was growing. That's why what Dave Filoni did with the inhibitor chip was foolish. And what we had in the Star Wars universe was so much better. And that has so much more behind it, was so much more. You understand? And that's basically what I'm laying down. So that's about it. So, I guess I'll see you next time, huh?